Hi everyone, my name is Marc Bates and this is the Rabbit Room Apologetics channel. So thank you all for joining. Last time we talked a little bit about why Genesis may sound like pagan myths and what was the purpose that Moses had in writing this, what was the context here. So now we're going to continue there. We are at verse 3 of chapter 1. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. There was evening and there was morning one day. Okay, couple things here. There was evening and there was morning one day. There are many people who want to take Genesis as being literal, especially about that there are 7 days, right? I don't know how you get a literal day from this one, in my personal opinion. There's no suns, there's no sun, there's no moon, right? There's no stars. Yeah, there is this thing called day and night, right? But nothing tells us how they're interplaying throughout here. So I don't know how you get one literal day. In my opinion, and I may be wrong here, this is not literal. This is very artistic. This is very poetic language here, right? And Genesis is written, especially the creation story, is written in Hebrew poetry. So this is not literal in my mind. This is very symbolic. So let's talk about this idea of evening and morning. So evening, Erev, morning, boker in Hebrew, right? Yeah, I mean, that's what those two words mean. But symbolically, what are we talking about here? And I want you to put yourself back in the mind of a person walking through the desert. Maybe you were a shepherd. Maybe you've got your sheep, right? That your flocks that you're working with here. What happens as the sun goes down, right? And you're getting into evening. As the sun goes down, it starts to get darker and darker. As it gets darker, things in the distance start to become less distinct, less visible. They start to merge together. There's less form, right? There's less order in there. And then when you're out in the fields and as the day starts, right? And the sun comes up and light starts to come in, right? Then things in the distance start to come into focus and you start distinguishing things and form comes in. So it's this idea of formlessness and form. And we talked about God hovering over the watery depths, right? And the idea of bohu and tohu, meaning formless and without order. So this plays right into here. Evening and morning here, while they literally mean evening and morning, Erev and Boker mean evening and morning, symbolically here, they are talking about, right, formlessness and void. It plays right into this idea, this poetic idea in Hebrew, which is you duplicate or you continue saying the same thing over and over again so that you get a better picture of this. And so if we're trying to talk about tohu and bohu being formless and without without order, then evening and morning is a great analogy for that idea, right? So that's where I think this comes into play. This is obviously radically different from what most people would understand to be here if you're following 20th century commentaries. But ancient Hebrew commentaries, ancient in this case being Middle Ages, right? And there were two great Hebrew sages in the Middle Ages. One was called the Rambam, the other was Maimonides. The Rambam, he said that evening and morning here really meant order and chaos. not literally, that's not what the words mean, but symbolically, that's what they're trying to portray, is order and chaos, because that's what we get from right before it, right? The idea of tohu bohu, right? Formless and without substance, right? Formless and void. So keep that in mind, right? This idea, and remember, we talked about how the pagan myths were all about order coming out of the chaos being represented by the watery depths, right? And we have the watery depths in verse 2. And so the idea here is we're not talking about, Ra or Marduk or Baal bringing order. We're saying God brought order to the world, right? And part of that order is this idea of day and night, or light and darkness. Where else can we see this? So remember, this is Logos Bible software, and one of the things I really like about it is the study assistant. And so I asked the study assistant, why does God separate the light from the darkness if the light is good, right? And this is the answer it gave us. Your question touches on a fundamental theological tension in Genesis 1. The search results suggest that God's separation isn't motivated by a conflict between good and evil, which is what the pagan myths would have told us, but rather serves a different purpose entirely. And this builds upon this idea that I have, that what Moses is doing is he's refuting the pagan ideas of creation and replacing that with a biblical idea, right? The separation doesn't stem from necessity or from responding to evil's influence. Instead, it represents the triumph of love that God intends from creation's beginning. The darkness in Genesis 1 isn't presented as an evil force, which is the way most of the pagan myths represent it, right? Represents darkness. Rather, it represents nothingness or void, right? What cannot participate in the light of God's word that calls all things into existence. The separation accomplishes something more constructive. It produces regularity through the cycle of day and night, establishing a basic feature of an ordered world. In separating light from darkness, God carves cosmos from chaos, pushing back threats to peace and creating a world that will be safe and secure. This procession of days makes possible a calendar, essential infrastructure for any functioning society. Theologically, while light and darkness are divided so completely they cannot be joined, God nonetheless divides time between them in regular succession, because darkness has its use. The shadows of evening enables rest and sleep. The daily alteration reminds us that our world is one of mixture and changes, right? The deeper metaphysical point, the boundary between being and nothingness, helps us understand evil's nature. The only way to opt out of God's purpose is to somehow embrace non-existence. Darkness isn't an opposing principle. It's the absence of being itself. God's separation of light from darkness then isn't about conquering the enemy, but establishing the ordered cosmos within which all created things, including human freedom, can flourish. I think that's a very interesting answer. I agree with the vast majority of it, obviously. Here, it fits in with what I'm trying to say about the idea here. So let's get back here. Right, we've got God is the creator. There is initially, we'll call it chaos or formlessness and void, right? God brings in light. He separates light from day. This is not about separating evil from goodness, which is the way the pagans would tell it. This is just separating the day, right? And we have this evening and morning, the first one day, right? It's not a literal day in my mind. This is just that ordering of succession here of God creating order. That's very important here because we're part of that order, right? So we've gotten through one day. If you have any questions, please let me know in the reply. I'd love to answer them. Also, if you've liked this video, please like it. subscribe to the channel, share it with a friend. And if you're interested in this type of discussion, look into look in the description for this video. There are 2 links. One is to my Bible study platform, and we have I present a lot of information there that I don't put on YouTube, and we do forums where you can ask questions, we can answer them, and we do live calls. So we can bring all that in there, plus quite a bit of other stuff. So think about joining that. It's $10 a month. Hopefully we keep that as low as cost as possible so that we can keep paying for everything, but we can give you good solid information and get you what you want. The other link is to Logos Bible Software. If you're not using Logos and you like some of the things that you see me doing in Logos, you get a discount using the link. So, hey, might as well get a discount. Hope everyone has a great day. We'll talk to you very soon. Thank you very much.